The stars had always looked down on Earth. The Galactic Council, made up of hundreds of advanced species, had long considered humanity weak and insignificant. They saw Earth as a small backwater planet, with no real military power or technological advancements. To them, humans were just another species, easily dismissed and easily forgotten. But the day would come when they would regret underestimating humanity. It all started when a lone human warship, the Defiant, appeared on the outer rim of the galaxy. At first, the galaxy took no notice. Human ships had crossed their space before, never posing any threat. But this time was different. The Defiant wasn't just passing through. It had a mission, and its presence wasn't something that could be ignored. The Defiant wasn't a massive fleet, but it didn't need to be. It was a single ship, built from the wreckage of older human warships, yet it was more powerful than anything the galaxy had seen from humanity. The crew aboard this ship wasn't made up of generals or seasoned veterans from other worlds. It was a ragtag group of human soldiers, engineers, and scientists who had come together in the face of impossible odds. And they weren't there to negotiate peace or ask for mercy. No, they had come to make a statement. The Galactic Council wasn't worried at first. After all, what could one ship do? The galaxy was filled with fleets, each one larger and more powerful than anything Earth had ever built. The Council's leaders laughed at the idea of a single human ship challenging their authority. They saw it as a passing joke, a mere glitch in the system. But their laughter would soon turn to silence. The Defiant's captain, a young woman named Emily Dawson, had spent years planning the mission. She knew the odds were against her, but she also knew that the one thing humanity had was determination. The Defiant wasn't a ship built for glory. It was built for survival. The humans aboard it weren't soldiers trained for the grand battles of the galaxy. They were survivors. And survivors always found a way. As the Defiant drifted closer to the heart of the galaxy, the first wave of enemy ships appeared. The Council, who had dismissed Earth as weak, were now sending their forces to deal with this lone vessel. What the enemy didn't realize was that the Defiant wasn't just any ship. It had been outfitted with weapons and technology that no one in the galaxy had seen before, weapons that were designed not for an empire, but for a people who had learned to fight with what they had. Captain Dawson's voice rang out over the intercom. "Brace for impact. This will be our only chance." The first enemy ships approached, a sleek fleet of alien vessels with advanced weaponry that far outmatched anything Earth had ever built. They fired their first volley, and the Defiant shook under the blast. But it didn't fall. Instead, it returned fire with a force the aliens hadn't expected. The Defiant's weapons ripped through the enemy ships, leaving them burning in space. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The humans had fought back. But it wasn't just the fight that caught their attention. It was the way they fought. The Defiant didn't rely on brute strength or sheer numbers. It used cunning, strategy, and a willingness to sacrifice. Emily Dawson wasn't just commanding a ship. She was commanding a revolution. As the battle continued, the human ship dodged, weaved, and outsmarted the enemy. Every attack seemed to have a purpose, every move calculated for maximum effect. The aliens couldn't understand it. How could such a small, seemingly insignificant species have mastered the art of war so quickly? Captain Dawson watched as the enemy fleet began to break apart. The once confident alien ships were now retreating, trying to flee from the human vessel. The Defiant had done the impossible. It had forced a much larger fleet to retreat with a single ship. News of the battle spread across the galaxy, and the Council couldn't ignore it any longer. A single human warship had just defied the entire galaxy, and in doing so had sent a message. Humanity was no longer a species to be ignored. The Defiant wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of what humanity could do when backed into a corner. The galaxy had underestimated them. And now, they would pay the price. What started as a single challenge had now become a rallying cry for humanity. The Council had no idea that this was just the beginning. As the Defiant sailed away from the broken remnants of the enemy fleet, the crew couldn't help but feel a mix of fear and pride. They had just won the first battle, but the war was only beginning. The galaxy had noticed them now, and they would have to be ready for whatever came next. The message had been sent. Humanity wasn't going down without a fight. You said. The battle between the Defiant and the alien fleet had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, and the Galactic Council knew they could no longer dismiss humanity as a mere nuisance. Their initial arrogance was gone. In its place was a mixture of fear and confusion. How had a single human warship, with no support, managed to defeat an entire fleet? How had humans, a species they thought primitive, possessed such power? The Council immediately called an emergency session. All across the galaxy, leaders of different species gathered in massive meeting chambers, awaiting the decisions of their masters. The Council members argued fiercely. Some called for the immediate destruction of the Defiant, convinced that humanity's challenge must be crushed before it could spread. Others, more cautious, worried that attacking humanity now would provoke something much worse. The galaxy was far too vast, and their ships too numerous, to be defeated by one small warship. But what if this was just the beginning? Captain Emily Dawson stood on the bridge of the Defiant, looking out into the star-filled expanse. Her crew, though weary from the battle, felt a surge of pride. They had survived against impossible odds, and their victory had sent a powerful message to the galaxy. But Dawson knew this was only the beginning. The aliens might have retreated, but they weren't going to give up. The galaxy didn't simply allow one of its members to defy them without consequence. They would come for Earth, for humanity. And when they did, humanity would need to be ready. The Defiant's sensors were picking up the movements of enemy fleets. The Council had mobilized its forces, and large groups of alien ships were now heading toward Earth. They weren't coming for a negotiation. They were coming to end this threat before it could grow. "What's our status, Lieutenant?" Captain Dawson asked, her voice steady, though her mind raced with possible outcomes. "We're running low on fuel, Captain. We'll need to resupply soon, or we won't be able to make it back to Earth." Dawson's gaze darkened. She had expected this. They were outnumbered and outgunned, and yet they had done the impossible once. Could they do it again? In the galactic capital, the Council was growing desperate. They had underestimated the humans, but now they knew better. A few of the more arrogant members still laughed at humanity, but even they couldn't ignore the fact that the Defiant had taken down an entire fleet. Their pride had been bruised, but their fear was even more profound. What if humanity wasn't just a fluke? What if their warship was just the beginning? If they could destroy one fleet, they could destroy more. Could they have the power to topple entire empires? "Send word to the fleets. Earth must be punished," one of the Council leaders ordered, his voice cold and calculating. "We will crush them before they can become a real threat." But there was one problem. They had no idea how to defeat the Defiant. The ship had taken down a fleet without any major casualties, and no one could figure out how it had done it. The technology aboard the Defiant wasn't anything like what the Council's spies had reported. Something about the ship was different. Something that made it far more dangerous than any other human ship. On the Defiant, Emily Dawson and her crew weren't waiting to be attacked. They were already preparing for their next move. The battle had given them something invaluable: confidence. They had proven they could fight, and now they would prove they could win. The Council thought they could send fleets to destroy humanity, but they had no idea what humanity was capable of. "Get ready for the next phase," Dawson said, turning to her crew. "They'll come for us, but we won't make it easy. We'll make them regret ever underestimating us." As the Defiant sped away from the wreckage of the enemy fleet, a new determination filled the hearts of its crew. They were about to show the galaxy something it would never forget. The Council had misjudged humanity, and now the consequences were about to unfold. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. It would never look at humanity the same way again. And the Defiant, This one ship was only the beginning. You said. The stars stretched out before the Defiant, like a vast ocean of endless possibilities. Emily Dawson stood on the bridge, her fingers grazing the edge of the command console. Her mind raced with the knowledge that the galaxy was now fully aware of humanity's strength. The news of their victory over the alien fleet had spread like wildfire, and the entire galaxy was watching with bated breath. The next move would determine the future of Earth and its people. The Council had mobilized. It was no longer just a matter of one fleet or one battle. The full force of the Galactic Council's combined fleets was on the move, heading straight for Earth. They wanted to annihilate the human threat before it could grow into something they couldn't control. Earth had shown that it wasn't a weak and helpless world anymore. It was a force to be reckoned with. "Captain, we've got incoming." Lieutenant Vance's voice rang out, snapping Dawson from her thoughts. He turned to her, his face tense with concern. "A fleet, multiple fleets, are coming in fast." Dawson's heart pounded. She had known this moment was coming. The Council would not rest until they had wiped out this challenge to their authority. They thought humanity was just a single ship, but they were wrong. It wasn't about one ship. It was about the entire human race, united, strong, and ready to fight for their survival. "We don't have the firepower to take on that many ships," Vance added, his voice tinged with fear. "They'll crush us in an instant." Dawson looked around at her crew. They were all young, many of them with little to no experience in deep space warfare. But in their eyes, she saw something that none of the other species in the galaxy could ever hope to understand: resolve. Humans didn't back down. They'd fought, even when the odds were stacked against them. It was what they had always done, and it was why they had survived this long. "We'll make them come to us," Dawson said, her voice steady, betraying none of the fear that she felt inside. "Get us to the asteroid belt. We'll use the terrain. If they want to fight, we'll give them one." The crew scrambled into action, their movements swift and precise. The Defiant veered sharply toward the asteroid field, the massive rocks ahead of them providing the perfect cover. As the ship entered the belt, the crew braced for what was to come. The Defiant wasn't the fastest ship, but it had something more valuable than speed: agility. In the tight confines of the asteroid field, it could move in ways that the enemy ships couldn't predict. The alien fleets arrived just as the Defiant disappeared behind the first cluster of asteroids. They scattered across the battlefield, trying to lock onto the human vessel. They had underestimated Earth's ingenuity before, and they would do so again. "Target locked," one of the alien commanders said with a grim smile. "Prepare to fire." But the Defiant wasn't where they thought it would be. Dawson had predicted their movements, had anticipated their every move, and now the ship was darting between the massive asteroid rocks, using them as shields. The enemy fleets were disoriented, their weapons missing by miles as they fired into the empty space where the Defiant should have been. "We've got them, Captain," Vance said, his voice full of excitement. "They're off balance. This is our chance." Dawson's mind was already at work. The Defiant was built for survival, not victory. But she had learned from every mistake, every close call. Now it was time to use every advantage they had. The Defiant wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's spirit. And if they could just survive long enough, they might just change the course of history. "We're going to hit them where it hurts," Dawson said. "Prepare the plasma torpedoes. We've only got one shot at this." The crew worked quickly, setting up the torpedoes and preparing for the most dangerous maneuver they'd ever attempted. The asteroid field, with its chaotic maze of floating rocks, could either be their salvation or their destruction. The Defiant darted in and out of the debris, the enemy ships struggling to follow its unpredictable movements. It was like dancing with death, and every move counted. "Fire," Dawson commanded, her voice a cold fire of determination. The Defiant's torpedoes launched, streaking across the void toward the nearest enemy ships. The plasma charges hit with devastating accuracy, tearing through the alien hulls like paper. Ships exploded, one after another, as the Defiant weaved and dodged. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse, and for the first time, the galaxy's fleets were the ones who were running scared. As the first alien fleet began to fall apart, the others scrambled to regroup. They had come expecting an easy victory, but instead, they found themselves locked in a desperate fight with a force they couldn't predict, a force they hadn't planned for. Humanity wasn't just surviving, they were winning. Emily Dawson allowed herself a small, grim smile. The galaxy had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying the price. But this was only the beginning. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The Council would come again. The galaxy would come again. But every time they did, they would find humanity more prepared, more ready to strike back. And that was something the galaxy had never expected. The victory over the alien fleet had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. News of humanity's unexpected success spread faster than anyone could imagine. The Galactic Council, once confident in their superiority, now found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew about Earth. They had expected an easy conquest, a simple sweep of their so-called primitive neighbors. But instead, they were left with burning wreckage and the haunting memory of a single human warship defeating them. On Earth, the atmosphere was tense. The war, though not yet fully realized, had become an undeniable reality. The Defiant had won its first battle, but the galaxy wasn't going to let that victory go unchallenged. Captain Emily Dawson knew that humanity had only a short time before the next phase of the war began. The Council wouldn't take long to retaliate, and this time, they would be better prepared. "We can't afford to relax," Dawson said, her voice steady but heavy with the weight of what was to come. "We've got one shot at making sure they never underestimate us again." Her crew, though exhausted from their previous battle, had not lost their resolve. They had been through the unimaginable. And now, they were ready for more. As the Defiant made its way back to Earth for repairs, Dawson's thoughts remained on the upcoming conflict. The alien fleets were regrouping, and they were more determined than ever to wipe out the human threat once and for all. "We've got incoming," Lieutenant Vance announced, his face hardening as the scanners picked up an unfamiliar signal. "It's not just one fleet this time. The entire sector is moving toward Earth. The Council means business." Dawson gripped the armrest of her command chair, her thoughts racing. The enemy ships were fast, and this time, they had come in greater numbers. Humanity couldn't win by relying solely on surprise tactics anymore. It was time to adapt and evolve, to fight not just for survival, but for their place in the galaxy. "We've got to go on the offensive," Dawson said, her voice filled with a fierce determination. "Prepare the Defiant for battle. We're not just going to wait for them to come to us." Her crew jumped into action, swiftly preparing the ship for another fight. Every member of the crew knew that this wasn't just a battle for Earth. It was a fight for humanity's future. The Defiant was their symbol, their weapon, their shield. But it wouldn't be enough to simply defend Earth anymore. They needed to strike back, to show the galaxy that humanity would not be a footnote in the history of the stars. As the Defiant slipped back into space, ready to face a new wave of enemies, Dawson's thoughts returned to the alien fleets. They had made a grave mistake by underestimating Earth. The Council believed that humanity was just a brief flash in the darkness, a species that had no business challenging their reign. But they were wrong. Humanity was more than a fleet. It was a force of will, an unstoppable wave of resilience and determination. "We'll make them regret ever challenging us," Dawson muttered under her breath as she watched the stars ahead. "They've seen what we can do. Now they'll see what happens when we fight with everything we have." The Defiant powered forward, its engines blazing bright as it moved into the heart of the galaxy. They had taken down one fleet, but the real test was yet to come. Humanity was no longer hiding behind its walls. They were stepping out onto the galactic stage, and they were going to make their mark. The galaxy would never be the same again. As the first enemy ships came into view, their massive hulls casting shadows across the blackness of space. Dawson didn't flinch. She knew what had to be done. The Defiant was more than a ship. It was humanity's answer to the galaxy's scorn. The enemy thought they could break Earth. But humanity had something they could never understand: the ability to rise from the ashes and fight back when the odds seemed impossible. "Get ready, crew," Dawson said, her voice a calm before the storm. "We've come this far, and we're not turning back. Today, we fight not just for Earth, but for every single human in the galaxy." The Defiant's weapons powered up, the hum of the ship's systems filling the tense silence of the bridge. Outside, the enemy fleets began to close in. But Captain Emily Dawson and her crew weren't afraid. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity wasn't just going to roll over. They were going to fight until the very end. And this time, they would do more than survive. They would make sure that no one ever forgot the name of Earth. The tension in the air was thick as the Defiant cut through the void, heading straight for the gathering fleet of the Galactic Council. The light from distant stars barely reached the ship's hull as it sped toward the heart of the galaxy, where the enemy awaited. On the bridge, Captain Emily Dawson's fingers gripped the edge of her command console, her eyes scanning the battle plans. The time for waiting was over. It was now or never. "We're close," Lieutenant Vance reported, his voice low but steady. "The enemy's fleet is about to enter the sector. We'll be in their sights in less than 5 minutes." Dawson nodded, her face etched with determination. She knew this wasn't going to be easy. The Council had mobilized every ship they had, throwing everything they could muster at Earth. The Defiant was the last line of defense. But Dawson had one thing the Council didn't: the will to fight for her people, for humanity. She wasn't going to let Earth fall. "All hands, prepare for battle," Dawson ordered. "This is it. We can't afford to hesitate." The crew moved quickly, their faces grim but resolute. They had come to understand that they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for a future, for Earth's place in the galaxy. Humanity had always been underestimated, dismissed as weak, as fragile. But today, they would show the galaxy what it meant to be human. The Defiant entered the asteroid belt again, its weapons systems humming as they powered up. Dawson had chosen this route strategically. The dense field of asteroids would give them the upper hand, just as it had in the last battle. It was a narrow advantage, but it was an advantage nonetheless. The enemy ships, massive and unwieldy, wouldn't be able to navigate the rocks as easily as the Defiant. They'd be forced to rely on their firepower alone, and Dawson knew that with careful strategy, they could turn the tide in their favor. "Enemy ships entering visual range," Vance announced, his voice tense with anticipation. Dawson stood up, her eyes narrowing as the large alien ships appeared on the view screen. They were massive, their sleek, dark designs exuding power and confidence. But even the most intimidating ships in the galaxy would struggle against the Defiant in the asteroid field. "Bring us to port, 30 degrees, Dawson commanded. "We'll make them think we're retreating. When they follow us into the belt, we'll strike." Her crew reacted immediately, the ship's engines roaring as they adjusted their course. The Defiant moved into the dense field of asteroids, the ship weaving and darting between the massive rocks with surprising speed and precision. The enemy ships hesitated at first, unsure of what the human vessel was doing. But their commanders quickly realized that the Defiant was trying to get them to follow. They wouldn't let such an opportunity slip by. "They're coming in fast," Vance reported, his voice full of urgency. "They've taken the bait." Dawson didn't waste a second. She gave the command, and the Defiant suddenly veered off to the side, using the asteroids as cover as the alien ships entered the dense field. It was now or never. "Target their engines," Dawson ordered. "Take out their propulsion, and they'll be dead in the water." The Defiant fired its first volley, the torpedoes streaking out and slamming into the rear of the lead alien ship. The explosion rocked the space around them. And for a moment, there was only silence. But Dawson knew better than to celebrate. The battle had just begun. The alien fleet responded with immediate retaliation, their weapons lashing out in a coordinated attack. Plasma cannons and energy beams tore through the asteroid field, illuminating the dark expanse of space. The Defiant darted and weaved, using the asteroids as shields. But even in such a chaotic battle, Dawson kept her cool, her mind racing with calculations, looking for openings, searching for the perfect moment to strike. Brace for impact. Vance yelled as a plasma beam came dangerously close to hitting the ship's starboard side. The Defiant shook, but Dawson held firm. "We can't keep dodging forever," Lieutenant Vance warned, his voice tense. "Their firepower is too strong. We need to hit back now." Dawson nodded, her mind already working. She glanced at the tactical display, her eyes scanning the positions of the alien ships. The Defiant had already disabled several enemy vessels, but there were still too many left. Too many powerful ships ready to crush them. "We can do this," Dawson muttered under her breath, her grip tightening on the console. "I know we can." The next few moments were a blur of energy blasts and counterattacks, the ship twisting and turning through the asteroid field as it fought for survival. The crew worked seamlessly, each member of the team performing their duties with precision, responding to Dawson's commands without hesitation. Then, as if by some miracle, they found the opening they needed. The enemy fleet had become overextended, their ships too scattered in pursuit of the Defiant. Dawson saw her chance. "Fire everything," she ordered. The Defiant unleashed its full arsenal, torpedoes, energy blasts, and missiles flying toward the alien ships. The first few shots tore through the enemy's defenses, and the entire fleet began to unravel. The Council's ships, now disorganized and panicked, tried to regroup, but it was too late. One by one, they fell, their massive forms splintering and disintegrating as the Defiant struck. As the final ship exploded in a fiery blaze, the Defiant hung in the silence of space. For a moment, no one spoke. The crew was too stunned, too breathless to believe what had just happened. We did it," Vance whispered, his voice full of awe. Dawson allowed herself a brief, exhausted smile. But it didn't last long. This victory had been hard-won, but the galaxy wasn't finished with Earth yet. The Council would return. The war was far from over. "Set course for Earth," Dawson said, her voice steady again. "We've won this battle, but the real war is just beginning." And as the Defiant turned back toward home, Captain Emily Dawson knew one thing for sure. Humanity had proven something to the galaxy. And no matter how hard they tried, no one could take that away from them. The Defiant sailed through the dark void of space, its hull still glowing from the recent battle. Captain Emily Dawson stood at the command console, her eyes fixed on the stars ahead, her thoughts heavy with the weight of what had just transpired. The victory over the alien fleet had been hard-earned, but it was far from the end. The galaxy had seen humanity's power, but now, the real question was, what would the Council do next? Dawson turned to her crew, her gaze sweeping over the men and women who had stood beside her in battle. They had won, yes, but they all knew that the next wave of retaliation would be even more brutal. The Council wouldn't stop until they wiped humanity from the stars. And yet, there was a strange sense of pride in the air. The crew knew they had done the impossible. They had taken down an entire fleet with just one ship. "We need to get back to Earth for repairs," Lieutenant Vance said, his voice laced with fatigue but filled with pride. "But we can't afford to take our time. The enemy is going to regroup, and they'll come after us again." Dawson nodded, rubbing the back of her neck. The ship was damaged, nothing catastrophic, but enough to make her uneasy. They had pushed the Defiant to its limits in the last battle, and now they needed to make sure it was ready for what was coming. "We'll make it," she said firmly. "Earth's defenses are stronger than ever, and we've proven ourselves. The Council might think they can break us, but they're wrong. We've only just begun." But even as she said the words, a deep sense of unease gnawed at her. The Defiant had done the unthinkable, But the reality was that the Council had far more resources, far more firepower than humanity could ever hope to match. The odds were still against them, and if the Council decided to use everything they had, Earth would be faced with a threat unlike anything they had ever known. Hours passed as the Defiant made its way toward Earth. The crew worked tirelessly to make the necessary repairs, while Dawson reviewed every piece of data they had collected during the battle. There had to be a way to turn the tide for good. The Council couldn't be allowed to dictate the galaxy's future. Humanity had earned its place, and now it was time to claim it. A few hours later, Lieutenant Vance approached Dawson, his face tense. "Captain, you need to see this." He handed her a tablet, the data on it flashing across the screen. It was a live transmission from the outer rim of the galaxy. The Galactic Council had made their move. A fleet, even larger than the one they had faced before, was heading straight for Earth. They had gathered every ship they could, Vance said, his voice low. "This is it. They're bringing everything they have to destroy us." Dawson's heart sank, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panic wouldn't help. They had faced the impossible before, and they would do it again. She turned to face her crew, her expression hardening. "Get ready," she ordered. "We won't back down. We'll fight until the last breath." But there was something else, something deeper, gnawing at her thoughts. She knew that this battle wouldn't be like the others. The odds were stacked against them. The fleet was too large, the weapons too powerful. If the Defiant went in alone, they would be wiped out, no question. "We can't face them head-on," Dawson said, her mind racing. "We need to split them up. We need to turn their own strength against them." Vance raised an eyebrow. "You have a plan?" Dawson's lips curved into a tight smile. "I've got a few ideas. We've been using surprise and stealth before. We'll use it again. But this time, we need more firepower. We can't just rely on the Defiant alone." She turned to the rest of the crew. "Start preparing the ship for evasive maneuvers. We'll need to lure them into an ambush. If we do this right, we can hit them where it hurts." The crew immediately went to work, every hand on deck moving with precision and urgency. There was no time to waste. The Council's fleet was coming, and they would arrive at Earth in mere hours. As the Defiant hurtled toward the home planet, Dawson stared out at the stars, her mind churning with the knowledge that the hardest part was yet to come. She had no illusions about the battle ahead. This time, they would need more than luck to survive. They would need everything they had, every ounce of courage, every bit of strategy, and a hell of a lot of heart. Her eyes narrowed as Earth's atmosphere loomed ahead. "We've shown the galaxy that we're not to be underestimated," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. "But now we're going to show them what happens when you try to destroy us." The Defiant broke through the atmosphere, its systems humming as it began its final approach. On the bridge, the crew was silent, each person lost in their thoughts as they prepared for the final battle. This time, humanity wasn't going to fight for survival. This time, they were going to fight for victory. The Defiant hovered just outside Earth's atmosphere, the mighty blue planet glimmering below. Captain Emily Dawson stood at the bridge's helm, her eyes narrowed as she gazed at the distant horizon, where the fleet of the Galactic Council loomed, massive and menacing. It was a sight that sent a chill down the spine of any soldier, but not Dawson. She had led her crew through the fire, and they had already proven that the impossible was within reach. Now it was time to finish what they had started. "Captain," Lieutenant Vance's voice interrupted her thoughts. "The enemy fleet is in range. They'll be in firing position within the next 5 minutes." Dawson's heart pounded in her chest. This was it. The Council wasn't holding anything back, but neither would humanity. "Get the fleet in position," Dawson said, her voice unwavering. "We'll need every ship we can get. Prepare for evasive maneuvers and counterattacks. Our first priority is to protect Earth." The crew scrambled to execute her orders. For a moment, the only sound on the bridge was the hum of the ship's engines and the tapping of fingers on consoles. But Dawson knew the true weight of what they were about to face. This wouldn't just be a fight for survival. This would determine humanity's place in the galaxy forever. The Defiant was joined by several allied ships, Earth's defense forces that had come together, united by the same cause. They were a ragtag fleet, made up of ships in various stages of repair and upgrades. But they were ready. They would fight with everything they had. The first wave of enemy fire came in fast, a barrage of plasma bolts and laser beams streaking across space. The Defiant weaved through the onslaught, its agile movements allowing it to avoid the worst of the blasts. But the fleet of the Galactic Council was relentless. Massive dreadnoughts and warships circled, closing in from all angles. Dawson's fingers tightened around the console as she barked orders, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around her. Focus fire on their lead ship, disable their communications, and we'll throw their coordination into disarray. The Defiant unleashed a volley of missiles, which hit their target with precision. The lead enemy ship rocked from the impact, its shields flickering before they collapsed. It was a good start, but Dawson knew that this was only the beginning. They needed more than just a few lucky shots. They needed to break the enemy's morale, and fast. "Enemy ship in pursuit, Captain," Vance shouted. "They're coming straight for us." Dawson's eyes flicked to the radar, where the approaching enemy vessel was closing in at full speed. It was huge, its dark silhouette nearly blocking out the stars behind it. It was the Council's flagship, a ship designed to end wars. And it was coming for them. "Bring us to port," Dawson ordered. "Evade and return fire." The Defiant made a sharp turn, narrowly avoiding the enemy's first salvo. The ship's shields flared up, crackling with the energy of the incoming blasts. The enemy ship didn't let up. Dawson gritted her teeth as she watched the readings on the console. The ship's energy reserves were dropping quickly. They couldn't keep this up for long. "Captain, we can't keep dodging forever," Vance said, his voice tight with urgency. "We need a decisive strike. Now." Dawson glanced at the tactical map, calculating their next move. There was no time to waste. The Defiant couldn't keep dancing around the enemy forever. They had to strike with everything they had. "We need to cripple their flagship," Dawson said, determination flooding her voice. "All available firepower on their main reactor. Now." The Defiant launched a series of concentrated blasts toward the heart of the flagship. The blasts tore through the shields, sending shockwaves rippling through space. The enemy flagship shook, its engines sputtering as it struggled to regain control. It was far from defeated, but Dawson could see the damage had taken its toll. The enemy fleet had been thrown into disarray. But even as the flagship faltered, the rest of the fleet pressed on, closing in with relentless fury. The battle raged on, weapons fire flashing through the darkness of space as the two forces clashed. The Defiant fought with everything it had, every shot, every maneuver designed to buy them more time. "Captain," Vance's voice was frantic. "They're deploying reinforcements, more ships, more firepower. We won't last much longer." Dawson's mind raced. They couldn't hold out forever. Earth's fate rested on their shoulders. She had to think fast, had to turn the tide once and for all. "Deploy all remaining drones," she ordered, her voice sharp. "We're not fighting just for survival anymore. We're fighting to win. Let's make it count." The Defiant launched a swarm of advanced combat drones, each one designed to harry and disrupt the enemy's firepower. The drones darted through space like shadows, their tiny frames slipping between enemy fire and striking with precision. For a moment, the Council fleet hesitated, their once unified offensive thrown into chaos. Dawson didn't give them time to regroup. "Fire everything," she commanded again, her voice steady. "It's now or never." The Defiant unleashed every weapon it had left, and in that moment, the tide turned. Plasma bolts, torpedoes, and missiles flew toward the enemy, breaking through their defenses and crippling their ships. The flagship faltered, its hull burning from multiple impacts. One by one, the enemy fleet began to fall. The remaining enemy ships scattered, trying to retreat. But it was too late. The Defiant and its allies pressed the attack, their firepower overwhelming the last of the Council's forces. The battle ended with an explosion of light as the final ship was destroyed, the Council's fleet vanquished. Dawson's breath came in ragged gasps as she watched the wreckage of the once mighty fleet drift into the void. The battle had been won, but there was no celebration on the bridge. The crew stood in stunned silence, knowing that what they had accomplished today would echo through the galaxy for years to come. Dawson turned to her crew, a weary but triumphant smile on her face. "We did it. Earth is safe. The galaxy will never forget what we've shown them today." And as the Defiant made its way back toward Earth, with the sun rising on the horizon, Captain Emily Dawson knew that humanity had proven its place in the stars. Against all odds, they had fought, and they had won.